Good afternoon and welcome. If you are a regular on my channel, today is not going to be a normal pattern kind of thing like I normally do, right? It's going to be different. And yeah, if you read the title, then you know what I'm talking about. It's going to be different. So good afternoon, and I would say welcome to any Gen Zs that are watching this. And I'm going to have some iced coffee because I'm Gen X and we run on coffee. Dunkin' Donuts totally stole that from us. Who am I? And why do I think I can tell you guys, I can give you guys advice? All right. So I am going to be 60 soon, actually. I am a 2-time cancer survivor. I've survived, I don't even know how many hurricanes, but the big one was in Puerto Rico. I was living there at the time. I lived in Puerto Rico, blah, blah, blah. I lived in, it sounds like I have bad luck. I lived in California specifically. I lived in San Francisco Bay Area during the 1989 earthquake that pretty much destroyed the city. So I've survived a lot. And most of all, I have never made more than $40,000 a year. I even have a side hustle now. And last year I only made 38, and I work for a union and my salary is pretty good and all of this. And I've owned 2 homes. Now, full disclaimer, the second home I inherited from my mother, but I did pay all the bills on it, all the taxes on it, all the upkeep, all the other stuff on it. But the first house I owned in the 90s, yeah, right? Did it all on my own. So that's why I wanted to give you guys some tips. And this is the reason that I wanted to do this. I've seen a lot of videos, and both negative and positive. I've seen videos where there's Gen Zers and they're talking about, you know, they can't make ends meet. They can't pay rent. There's all this stuff going on. I've also seen the other side of these videos, the negative videos that are kind of like, oh, Gen Z doesn't want to work. Gen Z is eating too much avocado toast. That's why I don't have money. And Gen Z's doing this and Gen Z's. Okay. So let's go back to the start. There are lots of videos out there about Gen X. I mean, there's like a ton, right? There's a plethora of these videos. And they all talk, and they're all slightly tongue-in-cheek, and they talk about all of the trouble we went through. But they miss some really major points. And I want to talk about them right now because I think it'll help Gen Z to understand a little bit more about where we're coming from. And I also want to talk about all of the stuff that I see that's being kind of put on Gen Z that was also put on Gen X. And I'm not kidding. We'll get to that in a minute. So here's the first thing about Gen Z that I always hear mentioned. We're the forgotten generation. Absolutely true. Most of us were the children of baby boomers. When we all know about the boomers, but what I think people forget about the boomers is they were born after World War II, after the Great Depression, after rationing. There was suddenly this abundance in the country. There was suddenly this abundance of money and children, and they were the baby boomers. The entire world, in the US at least, all of the energy of all the adults was focused on these lovely little Gen X, these boomers, right? When they grew up and had children of their own, in the 70s, they spent a lot of time exploring themselves. They got the nickname in the 70s of being the me generation because everything was about, yes, them. It was all about me. That was their generation. So yeah, Gen X, we were left to our own. Absolutely. It's all true. But there's some really dark stuff that you don't hear talked about so much. So let's start with some of the dark stuff, and then I'll get to some of the other stuff. You often hear people talk about the fact that we were the first generation that went through massive like divorce and blah, 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 right? Okay. Now, you have to understand that divorce in 1960 something, 1970 something was really different than it is now. Now, mom and dad come to you, they sit you down, they tell you how much they love you, they tell you that they're going to break up and you didn't do anything wrong and they both love you and you're going to see dad, you know, every weekend and you're going to live with mom during the week and blah, 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 and all this other stuff, right? Gen X. And I I'm about to say this, and I know Gen Xers are gonna laugh because some of them, this is exactly what happened to them. Dad went out for cigarettes, and you didn't see him again until you graduated from high school and you were 18, and he was no longer on the hook for child support. And usually, he had a whole new family by then, right? He had kids like half your age, and it was all like, and he was like super dad all of a sudden, and you were like, what the hell, right? Or like what happened to me, I came home from school and trigger warning. I came home from school and our house, there was nobody there and there was no furniture in the house because my sister, a boomer, by the way, was late to get me and my mom had moved out and we had gotten a new apartment and she was divorcing my dad. Also, third occurrence that I've heard from many of my Gen X friends is their mom came and picked them up at school, which was unusual, right? And they went to live with grandmom and grandpop. And mom and all the kids went and lived with grandmom and grandpop. And you might have seen dad, like, my dad showed up most Sundays for a couple of years. I think I was like maybe 13, 14. He stopped showing up, right? He actually moved to like Europe, right? Whatever. Yeah. So our divorce and being the children of divorce when you were Gen X is very different than modern divorce, where there's like this whole thing where they worry about the kids' feelings. No, that none of that was going on for Gen X. It was just like, yep, it's done. That's it. You may or may not see your dad again. I even have friends whose mom just split one day. Yeah, I know, crazy. Also moved in with grandma and grandpa. Dad moved in with grandma and grandpa. So that was the first thing. The second thing is, yes, we were on all on our own all the time. I did love it as a kid, but my mother did also lock the door on a Saturday morning and clean the house and told me to go outside and play. So I literally couldn't get back in the house because the door was locked, and I'm not the only kid that has that story. When you have kids running around in the streets with no adult supervision to watch them, bad things happen to those kids. And that is why pretty much the entire generation of kids on milk cartons in the 1980s were Gen X kids. That's my generation. You want to look for my generation? Go look at old milk cartons. We're on the back. This is what happened. Nobody thought twice about this. I mean, they told us a little bit about stranger danger. They were like, don't talk to strangers. Don't get into a car with people you don't know. Yeah, we know how that worked out, right? Yeah. Finally by the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, you had, the, what is it called? The something for missing and exploited children, the Foundation for Missing and Exploited Children. And people started to become really aware. And so like, if you're a millennial, especially, or a Gen Zer, you probably remember like getting your picture taken and like fingerprinted and stuff. And there was like a whole kit made for you with your identity so you could be identified and all this other stuff, right? And you had like the stuff in the school, the stranger danger stuff, like you had the assemblies in school that talked about like stranger danger and all that and stuff. Our assemblies in school were things like Blood on the Snow, which is, I am not kidding you, that's the name of it. It is a bus safety video where a bus, I can't even remember what happens, but it slides off the road and falls over a cliff and everybody dies and there's blood on the snow, right? Those were the kind of videos that we got to see when I was in junior high and, elementary school, and lots of don't do drugs type stuff. So of course, what did Gen X did? We did a ton of drugs. In fact, in the early 90s, we had our own drug issues, just like you Gen Zers have today. We had crack all over the Black community. It also affected every community, not just the Black community. Lots of white people did crack too, and Mexicans and Asians and everybody else. Lots of people did crack. We also had something called black tar heroin, which was going around in the early 90s. It was killing heroin addicts in that even people who had been doing heroin for a long time, this heroin was it was dirty and strong, and it could kill someone who had a very high tolerance from previously doing heroin. It would kill them dead. And then we kind of rolled into Oxycontin. We always had meth in the background. We used to call it crystal or crank. So the name's changed. It's still meth, still methamphetamine. So with all that said, another thing that I don't see talked about with Gen X, or I believe that maybe Gen Z misunderstands how great the 80s were. They weren't that great. I graduated from high school in 1983. I'd already been working for 2 years when I graduated from high school and turned 18. During the 80s, we had something called Reagonomics. And Reagonomics, in fact, Reagonomics is the reason all of you are poor today. Yeah, but it was also the reason that all Gen X was poor. We had Reaganomics, and then after Reagan had been in for 8 years, yes, 8 years, and was totally senile by the end, and we all knew it was like an open secret, but nobody wants to talk about that, right? We had George Bush, who was his vice president. We had him for 4 years. So he introduced something called Voodoo Economics. I still don't understand what that means, but all I know was it continued to keep me poor straight into the 90s. In fact, I didn't notice a difference in my life as far as finances until Clinton was president. That is when I bought my house. That's when the Democrats brought in all these like sweeping economic changes that allowed me to get a loan to buy a house. I'm not kidding. I didn't even have a credit card until 1994. Yeah. Not that that's a bad thing. I'm not a big fan of credit. I'm telling you, it's not a good thing. So now that we have that out of the way, I've seen multiple people talking about Gen Z, and they keep saying you guys don't want to work. And it's not a funny ha-ha thing for me, but it is a bit funny to me because, sorry, I'm going to adjust this a little bit, guys. They used to say the same thing about Gen X. In fact, before we were called Gen X, which was a name that was coined not by us, but by some, I can't remember, some newspaper article, I can't remember, right? Magazine article, something like that. They called us Generation X, the lost generation, which, by the way, is kind of interesting because there actually was a band that was fronted by Billy Idol that was called Generation X, and it was like his punk band before he went solo and did like the Billy Idol on his own, right? Just a little caveat there. Before that, they used to call us slackers. In fact, we were called slackers so much, there's actually a movie called Slacker that is filmed in Austin, Texas. Go watch it if you can find it. It's awesome. It's really fun to watch. But anyway, they used to say things like we were unmotivated, we were nihilistic, we didn't want to work, and we didn't like to work. And my favorite is that there was actually like there were these large corporations who said they didn't understand how to market to Gen X because we wouldn't buy their shit, which just cracks me up. Like we just wouldn't buy their stuff, and they couldn't figure out how to market to us because we weren't falling for it. And they tried everything, right? They tried putting like grunge music under their product placement in movies, all this. We still wouldn't buy their crap. And I think it really pissed them off, but it was also really fun, and Gen Z should try it. But you guys are now doing the underconsumption thing, which I adore. See, we didn't have social media. So all this little stuff that you guys are doing, we did a lot of it, but we didn't know other people were doing it. We knew people in our community were doing it. The closest thing that we had to social media was zines. If you guys don't know what a zine is, please look it up. It's short for magazine. They were self-published. They were little tiny magazines, and some of them got really big. The one that got the biggest, in my opinion, was Maximum Rock and Roll, which allowed small bands to almost book themselves and promote themselves without using promoters, without using like kind of the middlemen, right? So that they directly got the money from their shows. And Maximum Rock and Roll was awesome. It was full of band reviews. It was full of cartoons. There were great ads in the back. There was all kinds of stuff. There were articles and stories and everything. But there were tons of fanzines out there. There were fanzines and zines. So fanzines were, in my opinion, a little more a specific topic, like, where there would be zines, and zines could be like anything you wanted. There were zines that were they were just comics. There were feminist zines. They were just everywhere. It was kind of our form of social media. So do what you want with social media. Just watch out for influencers because that's kind of what happened to zines. A lot of them started to take ads from these companies who didn't know how to market to Gen X, and it just changed them and didn't make them very good. They kind of sold out. They did. They sold out. All right. So let's get to the nitty gritty. I actually wrote this shit down because I just started to write a couple of notes down for myself, and all of a sudden, all this stuff started pouring out of me. It was like stream of consciousness, and it made me truly realize how poor I have been my entire life. I mean, $40,000 a year back in maybe the 80s wasn't a bad salary, but $40,000 a year now, you're basically destitute, because like I think 20 is the cutoff, right, for poverty level. So, and what did I make last year? I made 38. Look, I'm putting on the special reader glasses, just like your grandma. I'm more of a crazy aunt, by the way, just so you know. By the way, if any of you watch this and you like it, in the comments below, just let me know that you liked it. I'm thinking about doing a second channel, like what's called an agony aunt channel for stuff like this. And I'm more than happy to answer any of your questions if I can. And I'll even try and research them if I can. If I can. I may not know the answer, but I can tell you what, I know how to be freaking poor. All right, let's get this show on the road. I don't want to make this like a 2-hour freaking video, right? Okay. So here's the first thing I want to talk to you guys about is the phones. And I know it's like trigger warning, you love your phones. I get it, you love your phones. But you got to be careful with those phones, because those phones are they're like modern TV. Back in the day, TV, especially in the 70s when I was a kid, and when most of Gen X was growing up, they really shaped us. They shaped us more than parents. In fact, they took the place for a lot of us of parents. And they created a bill of sale, kind of, that we had to pay on. And I see the same thing happening with social media. You have influencers. The word influencer at this point in time just means advertisers. And don't get me wrong, there's lots of people that I watch on YouTube, especially, that I love, and they like talk about a product that's sponsoring them or whatever. I have to be honest, I usually just fast forward right through the ads, because I'm not interested in your supplements, your super expensive mattress that's made out of God knows what. Like all of the other, more services stuff. Like, yeah, I just want to watch your video, and it's fine. My videos don't have any sponsor. I'm totally not monetized. I don't really want to be monetized, because it means that my hands will be tied on what I can say and what I can do as soon as I become monetized. And by the way, I'm pretty tech savvy, but I have no editing skills. So all of my videos look like this. It's me sitting in a room talking to a camera like a total psycho, right? I know. It's scary, isn't it? All right, so let's talk about the phones, because aside from the fact that they are advertising and they are influencing you and they're like modern TV, they can also be incredibly expensive when you start to look at the contract agreements, how often you're changing out that phone, and what do you really need from a phone. Like, I get it. Maybe none of you want to go back to the flip phone, but would a flip phone work for you? Just asking. All right. So this leads me into the number one thing that I wish someone would have taught me back in the day. And that is how to have poor math skills. And these are poor math skills. I wish I should have made a sign or something, whatever, just follow along with me. So here's the deal. You want to look at your bills and look at something that you pay daily. You want to multiply that thing that you pay daily by 30, just an average month, right? 30 days, an average month. Then you want to multiply it by 12. And you want to figure out how much you're paying for that daily item in an entire year. And then you have to ask yourself, is whatever worth $1,000 a year? If it's worth it to you, then it's worth it to you. It's fine. The other is you want to do the reverse, right? So you want to take something you're paying for yearly. Like a good example would be car insurance, even though car insurance, unfortunately, you usually get a discount if you pay it off. But it's still a better way to look at it because you may end up being able to save yourself that money throughout the year if you pay the car insurance once. So it's a really good thing to look at because you can look at, so you look at some yearly amount, like whatever, you divide it by 12. Then you divide that by 30, right? What you end up with is how much is that costing you a day? So again, is it worth X amount to you a day? Car insurance, unfortunately, is not the best example because most states you have to have it, but there are ways that you can save on car insurance. We'll talk about that in a minute. The same with monthly charges. Like I did this pretty recently for myself. I looked at how much I was paying monthly for some of these streaming services. And unfortunately, something I'm noticing about streaming services, and by the way, GenX went through this same thing in the late 90s with cable companies. And it was like, you're paying for the same channel 3 times. You know, you have this package with your cable, or you have this streaming service nowadays, right? And they have, let's say they have the Sci-Fi channel. Well, then you have this other one over here, and you're also paying on that one. And that also has the Sci-Fi channel. And then you have a third one, and they have a bunch of shows, not quite the Sci-Fi channel, but you can stream a bunch of old shows that used to be on the Sci-Fi channel. So you're paying for the Sci-Fi channel 3 times. Is it worth it to you? How much do you watch the Sci-Fi channel, right? Is there a free channel who shows all those same shows, right? So that you don't have to pay it at all. And that's the thing. Just like back in the day, there was free television. Now there's free streaming channels that you don't pay anything for other than having actual internet available at your location, right? It's a really good thing to think about. And I did that because I wanted to see how much are these things costing me a month? Because, like, let's face it, say you had a channel that you're streaming that's $5.99, which I don't even think any of them are that cheap anymore. And you're paying for it 12 months out of the year, right? We're talking, what is that? That's going to be, no, actually, at $500, that would be a $4.99. And $500, actually, when you think about it, is still pretty high to be paying for streaming service. And that would be like a streaming service that was what, $4.99 or not even. Be less than that. It would have to be like $3.99, right? Yeah. It's a really good way is to audit your bills. And here's something to talk about. You need to audit all your bills on a regular basis. That includes looking at your credit card statements, make sure you're not being charged for things that you canceled, which happens all the time. Happens to me all the time. I'm always making sure I check that. You need to look at some of these streaming services and subscriptions and things you might have signed up for. Maybe you wanted to get a discount on it and you signed up for it and you forgot to cancel it and you've been paying for it ever since. Gym memberships. Yeah, that's a big one. I think my nephew is still paying on a gym membership that he doesn't use, and he's had it for like 2 years. Yeah, it's only Planet Fitness. It's like $10 a month, and it comes out of his pay. But I don't even think he realizes he's still paying for it. But $10 is $10, right? Yeah. So I've seen a lot of people talk about they can't afford their rent, and I can tell you right now, we couldn't afford our rent back in the 80s either. I did not have a living situation without roommates until 1992. So by then I would have been, how old was I? 27? 27. Yeah, 27. That was the first time I lived by myself. And it was a $400 really weird, like cut up apartment that had it was just really weird. Like the bedroom space, you came up the steps and it was like this back room that obviously wasn't a bedroom originally. And then you walked into a big space that was like the living, dining, and kitchen. And then shoved in the corner kind of behind the kitchen was the bathroom, but you had to go through the kitchen to get to the bathroom. But it was $400. So I took it, right? But it was the first time. We had roommates. We also did this thing that was really interesting. I don't even know if you can still do it because, things have changed so much, but one person would rent an enormous house. There's a lot of these in Philly. That's where I was living. If you're living in New York, you know what I'm talking about. These like giant old houses, right? And they would have like in Philly, they had 3 floors, and they would have 2 to 3 bedrooms per floor. And sometimes they'd even have a bedroom like on the first floor. Somebody would rent this house. You'd take the rent, you'd divvy it up, and you divvy it up pretty evenly, with the exception of like you could do $100 either direction if a room was super big on comparison to another room on the same floor being super small. And you'd have like 6 roommates. I also know somebody, my hand to God, my lips to God's ear. She rented her couch in New York City. And we're talking about like 1987. She lived downtown. She lived in the like Houston Street area for $500. And this person thought that was a deal. And they, shared the kitchen, shared like what was left of the living room. And, my friend basically at night would go into her room and read and listen to music, whatever. And then this person that rented from her would have like the living room as a bedroom space. And she did that for years. I mean, she did that until she got a teaching job and moved out of state. I mean, that's how long she did it. It was at least 3 or 4 years. But that's how bad it was. I had at one point in time 3 roommates. We each had a room. We each paid $300 a month. So we were paying $1,000 for a 3-bedroom house, which I know to you guys is like crazy cheap, you're thinking, but you have to remember what the money was like 40 years ago in 1980. I made probably $600 a month. I was working as a waitress. I was going to college. I was trying to pay for college, not get into student loan debt. We're not even going to talk about student loan debt because in my opinion, it's a giant scam. Yeah, I said my piece about that. So another thing I wanted to talk about was, I think you guys don't realize that you have this amazing thing called a library card. And I know some of you listen to audiobooks. Some of you probably still even read and buy books. But libraries have so much stuff that people never think about. The reason I thought about library cards is I saw pretty recently a video that someone did talking about they were worried about Generation Z because you guys don't have a third space. Now, this is one thing I can tell you that I loved about the 80s. We had lots of third spaces and we created them ourselves. First of all, you would go see bands and punk bands and stuff in the weirdest places you can possibly imagine. I remember seeing a really great punk band who can't remember their name. I just remember they were really good in a storage unit, but it wasn't like a regular storage unit. It was a storage unit that was used for only like big equipment. So it was basically like a garage. And it was like on the outskirts of Boulder, Colorado. And I went and saw it. And this band was so good because it was basically just a giant garage. These guys rented it. It had electricity and they put on shows. And that was one of our third spaces. We also used to create third spaces in our own homes. People used to have parties. You'd call up your friend that was DJing on the side, or even just your friend who had a couple turntables and a great record collection. And you'd have them come over and you'd invite a bunch of people and you would have a party. I also used to go to parties in warehouses. I knew friends that were renting warehouses, entire floors of warehouses. Again, this is not something you can really do so much anymore because they were really cheap. And they would have only electricity and only a bathroom with a sink. And then you would have to put one of those horrible aluminum square shower things in, but people lived in them. We'd have those. We always had cafes. Cafes were a thing, she says as she drinks more coffee. And we did go to bars, but I have to be honest, in the 80s, I went to bars, but not in the way people kind of go to bars, generally speaking. Bars were expensive. Like I remember a friend of mine and he was complaining, and this is going to be funny now, but it wasn't funny then. He was complaining because it cost him $5 for an Amstel Light. And he could get a 6-pack of Amstel Light for $6, which was absolutely true. And that was in like a nightclub kind of bar type thing, right? Because the people going to them were yuppies. And guess what yuppies were? That's right. Yuppies were the tail end of the boomers, right? They were kind of the late boomers, right? So they were out of college maybe at the end of the 70s. So by the 80s, they were starting their careers and they were, yeah, it's like a whole thing. And they had money, but none of the rest of us did, right? So we didn't really go to bars or anything like that. But we created third spaces for ourselves. And I know some of you that's hard. You're maybe your first job, you're living in a city away from where you grew up. You may not have that many friends. Unfortunately, there seems to be a trend that you guys aren't great at making friends IRL. And that worries me about you guys. But this is what I wanted to talk about. If you're living in a major city, even if you're living in a small town, I live in a small town, check out your library. First of all, there's physical media, which we'll talk about in a minute because I love physical media. Libraries have all this other stuff going on. They have lectures. Some of them show movies. They do like, I've seen libraries that do like a night where some guy comes in and plays like piano. Like, see what your library's doing. It doesn't cost you anything. The next thing we're going to talk about, because I love it, is physical media. And why is physical media important? Because I have lived through a hurricane where the power was knocked out for months. And I had this little tiny DVD player, like the portable kind, that you use for kids or use on airplanes or whatever. I used to charge that thing up with the solar. And then I would watch all these movies and stuff that I had. And it kept me entertained. I also read. I also had, someone had given me all these like word search books. It was really odd. My friend's mother, who only spoke Spanish, their grandmother actually, gave me a word search book because it was in English. And of course I took it because how could I not? It's somebody's grandma, right? Of course I'm going to be like, thank you. And I did. I took it. I was like, thank you. Never thought I would use that thing. And the power went out and all I had was like a battery operated radio and like a battery operated light for like a camping light. I would sit there and do those. I did the whole book, but it kept me sane during this power outage, which is why physical media is important. So keep buying books, please. It supports the writer. Check out your library. Check out your library. At your library, you can check out movies, including really recent movies. Like if they came out on any type of like DVD, you can rent them out at your library, but also check out your library as a third space because I worry. I worry about you guys. I want you to be social. It's one of the things that helps the best when you're poor is having other poor people around you. Just keep that in mind. Absolutely avoid debt if you can. And I see everybody talking about this, but I'm not sure people really understand how crippling debt can be. If you're paying back student loans right now, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But you also need to be careful about avoiding consumer debt because it's also a scam. It's a scam. It really is. They're always adding those charges. They're always adding those charges to you. You got to be careful. I also am really hesitant. I keep seeing these online bank card things where they offer you this or that, and you'll get paid 2 days earlier. There's no fees, blah, blah, blah. Okay. They have to make money. So you need to read that fine print because somewhere they're making money off of you. Read the fine print. Always read the fine print. Trust me. If you have to take a picture of it with your phone and enlarge it, just kidding. Try and save money. I know. You get that check and it's already spent. I completely understand that. I'm still doing it. I'm almost 60. Try and save 10% of your check. And I know that's tough because if you're a person only making $100 a week and you're trying to save $10 from that 100, you're now left with 90 for all the stuff you got to pay. But please, I beg you, try and save. The only place not to save money, in my opinion, and you can still save money on it, but it's someplace that it's important to spend, is health insurance. If you have access to health insurance, because we have, what is it called? The Independent Healthcare Act? Is that what it's called? Everybody always calls it Obamacare, but that's not the name of it. Anyway, get health insurance. You might feel young, you might feel fit, whatever. You might think, I never go to the doctor, I'm never sick, blah, blah, blah. Have it anyway. I am a person who had cancer twice. The first time, I had very good insurance, but it still didn't cover all of it. I still had to go out of pocket for about 10 grand. I did it over time. It wasn't quite as noticeable, but I did have to go out of pocket. And it's a lot. It's a lot when you're poor. Second time, again, had really good health insurance. It also wasn't as expensive. My first cancer treatment cost over $1 million. I'm not kidding you. My second one, I don't know, 200 and something. That, I mean, it's still up there, right? It's still like so much money. It's like a house, right? It's like a house in this economy. And I only ended up having to pay like a couple bills. I think it was less than $1,000. And again, I was able to pay them over time, got rid of them. It was all good, but still a problem when you're a poor person. Okay. So let's talk about credit a little bit, because if some of you do not have good credit and people are trying to talk you into the best ways to get a good credit rating, which is, by the way, also totally a scam that was invented in like the 80s. I never remember anybody talking about credit ratings till like the 90s, when I was looking for a house and they were like, well, you don't actually have a credit rating. I'm like, yeah, because I'm a waitress and no one would give me a credit card, you know. So the guy actually said to me when I was going for the loan, just go get a store card. And I was like, a store card? He's like, yeah, go to Sears and Roebuck. They don't even exist anymore. They're the easiest place to get a store card. I was like, okay, this actually was great advice from this guy, because he was trying to get my loan and it was just like so hard. Actually, as it turned out, my mother actually had to co-sign for me. And then we had to redo it like in a year and get her off my mortgage. But anyway, this was really good advice. Hey, Sybil, I got your package. We're gonna look at them next week. But this week, we're talking to the youngins about saving money. So this guy gave me this advice: go get a store card at Sears. He said it's the easiest place to get a store card. And I was like, okay. So I went to Sears and I applied and I got a store card. Here's the thing: I never bought anything at Sears. Like, I didn't buy clothes at Sears. I didn't need tools. I just didn't shop at Sears. I think while I was there that day, I found out that they had like tall pantyhose. Like, I'm really tall. I'm like 6 feet tall. And back in the day, like, there just wasn't that much tall clothing around. So I bought some tall pantyhose. I think maybe the total was $10, not even. Bill came, paid the bill, $10, paid it, the whole bill. Damn, there you go. I have a credit rating. You guys can do the same thing. You don't need these cards that are like, we're your friend, we're going to get you paid 2 days earlier and there's no interest. Yeah, you have to make some money somehow. So I really need to read your fine print. But what you can do is, if you don't own a car, go get a gas card. Go buy yourself an iced tea. Pay the iced tea off. That's it. Don't use the card anymore. You now have open revolving credit with a credit line that is completely paid in full, and you're creating a credit rating. But when are you going to use the gas card? You're going to buy Doritos once in a while? Okay, do it, right? And if you do have a car, someone told me, I don't know if this is true, that the Home Depot credit card is a super easy credit card to get. And again, if you don't own a house, you're not going to be mowing a lawn, right? You're not going to be building. You're not replacing your roof anytime soon or buying a new fridge. Get yourself a Home Depot credit card. By the way, they sell toilet paper, and their price on toilet paper is usually pretty good. Go buy some toilet paper, pay it off the next month. Bam, you got a credit rating. None of this messing around with these cards that are going to, do all this stuff. Here's the problem. They're almost too good to be true. And when things are too good to be true, they usually are. So yeah, just saying. All right. So here's the biggest thing that I would take away from GenX is we bought, because we had to, as much as we possibly could used. Again, back in the day, thrift stores, in my opinion, were better. They had better stuff. They had all this cool stuff from the 40s, 50s, 30s, 60s, even 70s, and it was all in really good shape, a lot of it. It was very well cared for. The whole reason grunge fashion was a fashion statement was because if you look at grunge clothing, it was all used. You could go there were rows of flannel shirts. That's why everybody was wearing flannel shirts. There were rows of old ripped up jeans that people didn't want to wear anymore because they had a hole in the knee. Wasn't a fashion thing back in the day. Back in the day, you wanted your jeans to be like pristine, right? So there you go. That's what we were wearing. Me as a girl, I used to go find all these really cute 1960s dresses, and they were mini dresses, which is why you see all the baby doll dresses in 1990s fashions. But this is what I'm saying. Buy as much as you possibly can used. Okay. The only things I don't think I would buy used would be a bed because I'd be afraid of bed bugs, and underwear because that sounds really gross to me. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, and here's the other tip. When you do have to buy new, you need to buy everything out of season except your food. So if you get to the end, say you get to August and you're like, man, this bathing suit, this is the last hurrah for this bathing suit. Do not wait to buy a new bathing suit till next June, because you will be paying the highest price you possibly can for a bathing suit. It's like there's this old adage about the most expensive umbrellas are purchased on days that rains. It's like I don't think it's translated from another language, and probably sounds better in the other language, but it's the truth. Like, yeah, if you know you need a winter coat, like this is the last year this coat's going to make it, right? You want to buy your winter coat in like May. They're going to be the cheapest you can possibly get them if you buy new. Because if you buy used, you might be able to get a winter coat, really, really good winter coat, even in the middle of the winter. So you're going to buy everything out of season except your food. And let's talk about your food. Okay, so we're gonna talk about food pretty much from now on, because this is the one area where you can really save some cash besides auditing your bills. And by the way, you can always talk to a company and see if your bill can be lowered in some way. Just be careful when they start doing extra fees and interest and anything else like that, any type of convenience fee, things like that. That's where you're going to start to lose money. But so we're going to talk about food, because this is where you can save the majority of your money. And it's where a lot of people spend a lot of money, right? So every food has a season. Every one of them. We think of fruit and vegetables as having a season, but seafood has a season. Even meat has a season. Like meat, there's a lot more chicken and better prices on chicken in the spring and summer than there is in the fall. Whereas in the fall, you'll start to see pork prices going down. And it's because of the way they breed the animals. Now, if you're vegan, I understand this might gross you out a little bit, but this is the way they breed and slaughter the animals, and the amount of time that animals need to mature. So I just wanted to bring that up because I wanted to prove the point about like seasons. So you want to look for what is in season. Now, the only exception I've ever found to this is bananas. Now, I know bananas have a season because I had a banana yard. I had a banana tree in my yard in Puerto Rico. And right around Christmas time, it was tons of these little tiny, delicious, like they were the size of your thumb, these bananas, right? But bananas seem to always be around. The price seems to be constant. I don't even want to know why bananas are always that cheap, because it's probably some scary corporate thing, right? But whatever. But everything else is going to have a season. So we just came out of berry season where I live. So blueberries were like dirt cheap. So I bought some and I froze them, right? Great thing to do. You have the room, buy stuff, freeze it. All of your foods are going to have a season. We're going back into school now. So you're going to see things like peanut butter and jelly, cereal, snacky kind of foods, especially the individual, snack foods, applesauce, things like that. They're all in season. I got grapes today, dirt cheap, because we're in grape season. This is about the time that grapes start to get harvested, whether they're table grapes or wine grapes. They're getting harvested in the early fall before the frost. You're going to see grapes. So you're going to notice that certain things are dirt cheap at your supermarket. certain times of the year. And then you're also going to notice those things are super expensive, or they're coming from some country that you can't even pronounce in like January, right? Like blueberries. Like, yeah, even though they were coming from Peru, which I can pronounce, but that's a long trip for berries. And honestly, I didn't think they tasted that great. I tried them, they weren't that great. So when you see those prices, that is what is called a loss leader. Now, I got to tell you, in this current day and age, even the stuff that's loss leaders to me seem really expensive. Like, they just do. Like this week, my supermarket, the loss leaders were potatoes, broccoli. Oh man, a fly just went into my drink. Damn it. Potatoes, broccoli, and they had a loss leader on hot dogs because I have a feeling they're just trying to get rid of all the hot dogs they bought for summer. And because it's Labor Day weekend, they're thinking they're going to get rid of them. But yeah, stuff like that. But I did also notice they had all the deli meats were on sale. Every single deli meat was at least $1 cheaper than it normally was because that was like a loss leader. I still thought they were a little expensive, but whatever. So loss leaders almost always show up on the first pages and back pages of your circulars. Every week, you got to get those circulars together and you got to see what's on sale, see what the loss leaders are. And it may pay for you to jump from store to store if they're not too far apart. Think about that. I do want to talk about a couple of appliances that will save you money when it comes to saving on food, but these are only if you can afford them. I would try and buy them used. One of them, it's funny. I just saw someone online that I watch all the time talking about how she saw one of these in a thrift store and it was less than half the price of a new one. And this one was new in the box. It still even had the styrofoam to hold it in place. And that was the Instapot. I also love crock pots, Instapots. Those two are two of my favorites. I bought myself a vacuum sealer during Amazon Prime days, and I got a really good deal on it, and it's my new favorite toy. I love that thing. But if you are a person like me who's very poor, but you're single, so you're only cooking for one, you will notice that the deals on meat are better. The unit price of the meat is better when you buy the family packs, but I could never store it all. So I bought this and I started sealing these up and I put this meat in my freezer now. And so that's why it's my new favorite toy. But you're also going to look at things like like if you buy smoothies out on a regular basis, look into getting yourself a cheap blender, honestly, and making them at home. You're going to save yourself a ton of money. I'm not even going to talk to you guys about the coffee makers because we've all heard the analogy of not buying coffee out. In fact, if you work in a building if you work in an office where they provide you coffee, even if it's a coffee club where you have to pay a certain amount every month, do that instead of buying your coffee, or make the coffee at home, put it in a roadie, take it with you, right? You get it yourself a container and take it with you. By the way, same with bottled water. Don't buy water. Most of the water you're buying is just filtered. There have been multiple incidences where companies have been labeling their water as spring water, and it's been found out that it's just simply filtered water from a tap. So just do it yourself and save yourself the money. Get yourself a Brita, get yourself a bottle that you like, and yeah, just do that. Do that instead. Obviously, a coffee pot. If you are going to get a coffee pot and you're going to get a Keurig, get the one that has the refillable that you can do yourself, because those Keurig pods and then the Nespresso pods are outrageously expensive and horrible for the environment. So please just make your own coffee, use the reusable pod. It's much easier. And I would say if you can afford it, and by the way, you can always raid your parents' house. There's a possibility your mom has a bunch of this stuff in boxes in the basement. You can always try raiding their house, is a toaster oven. The reason I love a toaster oven better than just a slice toaster is you can cook other things in toaster ovens. Most of them fit like a small pizza. You can use them to heat things up that you may not necessarily want to put in a microwave, like things that are breaded, they heat up better. When you put them in the microwave, the like breading gets all weird. So I would look for something like that. So let's take a look at when you need stuff like this. Okay. Very first thing I would do is I'd look for a free group on Facebook and see if there's a free group. And you might be able to just put up an ad saying, hey, I'm looking for a toaster oven. Somebody might say, oh, I have this. You're going to have this one. It's a little dirty, but it works. There you go. You got a free toaster oven. When it comes to furniture and things, I am a notorious curb surfer. What does that mean? That means that I pull furniture and things like that out of the trash. Right now, as we speak, my dresser in my bedroom, I pulled out of the trash here at my apartment complex. The side table in my living room, which is a mid-century modern, beautiful side table, I pulled out of the trash. I saw it on my way to work, went back and got it when I was done work. Yeah, still there. By the way, also my dresser, mid-century modern. I mean, we're talking like beautiful pieces that you would spend a fortune on if you bought them from someplace like Joybird, but some idiot threw them out because I don't know. And they're like solid wood. The veneer was beautiful, the whole thing, right? I have little side tables in my bedroom that are stacking glass side tables that someone I knew was going to throw out. And I was like, you're throwing them out? And she was like, yeah, I don't like these anymore. And I went and I said, can I have them? And she was like, sure. So I have those. I mean, I have so much stuff in my apartment that I got off the curb. It's crazy. Like lamps, everything. Like half my apartment is furnished with stuff that I pulled off the curb. Not kidding. And I am not above dumpster diving. I have a piece of art hanging on my wall that I pulled out of the dumpster. Or technically, it wasn't the dumpster. It was leaned against the dumpster, but I saw it and I thought that's cute. And it was really nicely framed and it's hanging on my wall. It's awesome. I love it. It's beautiful. I'm not above dumpster diving. I'm not even above dumpster diving for food. If you live in a major city, see if you can find a freegan group. They may be going out and finding these places that are putting, perfectly good food into the trash on a nightly basis. It'll save you money. Not to mention, I know people that have pulled clothes out of the trash, shoes out of the trash, toaster ovens out of the trash. Do what you got to do, kids. Like, look, GenX, we dumpster dove like crazy, like crazy. Always curb surfed. Back in the day, everybody I knew, not just me, half their furniture was from the curb. Like somebody threw it out. They picked it up, put it in their apartment or their loft or, the crazy warehouse they were living in with 16 people. Like that's the way we did it. It's the way that we saved money. We didn't have more money than you. That's the thing I really want to impress on you guys, because I see people talking about Gen X. We didn't have more money. If you want to blame somebody for the economy, you need to talk to the boomers. They voted for Reagan. All those hippie types, all love and peace hippie types, guess what? By the time they got to the 80s, they all wanted to protect their assets, most of which they inherited from their hardworking parents, by the way. They voted for Reagan. Like in mass, voted for Reagan for 8 years, and then voted for Bush to protect that kind of subsidized lifestyle. And that's why we call them the me generation. Mm-hmm. All right, so let's talk about food. Look, I had to write it down because I just kept like coming up with ideas. But these are some real drill downs, kind of like going down the rabbit hole ways to save money, even though the first one's not that big of a deal. Don't buy your lunch outside your house. Take your lunch to work. Take your coffee to work. Take your bottle of water to work. I would even say leave an empty water bottle at work for when you forgot your bottle of water. Because if you buy the bottle of water somewhere in the building where you work or in the neighborhood where you work, it's going to cost you twice as much as your own water. And again, you may work in an office where they have like a water cooler that has the filtration system on it. So get their free water. Don't spend your money on water. Okay. All right. This is a weird one, but this is a personal one for me. You see a lot of people talking about like I'm so broke, I'm on the rice and beans and rice diet, like this whole thing, whatever. Okay. Here's my advice to you. If you're trying to save money on food, if you're packing your own meals from home, cooking your own meals at home, all this stuff, make sure you either make yourself something sweet or buy yourself something sweet, including just get yourself some stuff from Dollar Tree, some cookies, whatever is your thing. Personally, I like cookies. I think cookies are great because you get a lot of them for a small price, and just a couple can really kill your sweet craving. Because if you start to deprive yourself, you will never do this. You will, after a week, you'll be like, that lady's full of shit. I'm starving. I can't do it. And then you'll go to McDonald's and use the app. And I love the fact that the app makes you think that you're saving money. And I'm like, your food's still overpriced. Like I have the app. I used it pretty recently, and I got like breakfast for like $7, and I was still like, you know what? This is still overpriced for what I could buy all these ingredients and still have these ingredients left over for what you just charged me, even with the app. So yeah, it's what's going to happen. Um, like I said earlier, if they have coffee at work, coffee can be very expensive. I actually buy my coffee off Amazon because it's the cheapest price I can get. But here's another thing. If wherever you're shopping has an aisle that is Latino food, go see if they sell coffee in that aisle because it's going to be cheaper. It's very good coffee, by the way. I use it all the time. I actually, unfortunately, where I live, they do sell Puerto Rican coffee, and it's the same price as the American crappy coffee. So I end up buying coffee off Amazon because I can get the best price on it. I buy beans and grind them myself because you get more. Little known fact. And again, but drink your coffee at work. If do the work coffee thing. And the reason I say this is you may not necessarily want a cup of coffee when you're running out the door in the morning, but you may want one at 10 o'clock after you've already done an hour's worth of work. That's when it's going to hit you to go get coffee. And that's where you're going to spend the money. And the coffee shops know that. That's why they have all the pastries, right, where you're waiting to pick up your coffee because they know you're going to be like, oh, look at that cookie. Oh, that cookie looks so good. Right. Yeah. And don't skip breakfast. I know I sound like a little old lady when I say that one because I am. But don't skip breakfast. Even if you don't feel super hungry in the morning when you get up, like I don't, wrap something up and take it to your office or wherever you work for your breakfast, your first like break, because it's another trap is as soon as you start to feel hungry, you're going to go buy some crap and it's going to cost you a fortune. And here's the worst news. I knew that this next thing is going to be the hardest thing for everybody to take because I've been in this situation before and I've already had people comment that this is the hardest thing for me. You have to learn to cook from scratch. I know some of this processed food seems so cheap, but in the long run, it is not. And it's not cheap for several reasons. The ingredients they're using are so horrible that the product is mostly laden down with a lot of salt and additives to trick your body into kind of liking the taste of it. The portions are usually fairly small. Ultimately, some of the ingredients may actually cause you to have bad health, which means you're going to pay for it on the other end, right? Like, so the bigger the front, the bigger the back, right? That's kind of the thing, right? Yeah. If it's got a big front, guess what? The back, even bigger. Yeah. So you got to think about that. Like in the long term, yeah, this thing seems really cheap, but yeah, it's got all these horrible ingredients in it, but it's really cheap. But oh yeah, it's gonna cost you on the other end. And I know that when I say cook from scratch, people they freak out a little bit. I was a chef for a long time. I was a private chef. I taught cooking. I literally know. I've met people who have said, I don't know how to boil water. And you can learn anything on YouTube. I have all the faith in the world in you. I've never met a person that I couldn't teach to cook. I'm not kidding. Everybody can learn to cook. It's not something you're born knowing how to do. So everybody had to learn to cook, and you can do it too. And any diet you can possibly imagine, there is a YouTube creator out there, and she will teach you how to cook it. I have actually listed below in the notes, which I hope you guys can see, a couple of my favorite YouTube creators that create videos around food. One of them is Rebecca. She does Dollar Tree dinners, but she's been branching out and doing other stores, Walmart, all those different stores. I put a video down below, which was her comparison between prices at Walmart and prices at Dollar Tree. I put Christine. the Frugal Fit Mom. She is really awesome. I actually put up her video of how to create your first pantry. Like, she gauged it kind of for college students or people leaving college, first apartment kind of thing. Great video. And I put Julia Pacheco. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce her name. Pacheco, I think. Pacheco, maybe. Her cooking videos are done in a style where you can freeze the video and see what she's doing. She does everything step by step. So she does like a downward shot cam. So it's always her chopping or her showing you how to chop or mixing or stirring or whatever. She gives you a complete breakdown of everything she bought and how much it cost her. And she shows you which meal she's making out of it. She even now has her own little cookbook, if you're interested. The thing I like about her is her recipes are very simple, and she's got everything you can possibly imagine. She has no cook meals. She has crock pot meals. She has meals for one. She has no cook desserts. Everything you can possibly imagine, she has videos for. So check her out. That's why I put them all down below. They're all really good. Any of these women, I would trust to teach you to cook, honestly, in all honesty. They all have slightly different styles, but they're all really good. And remember that, and don't freak yourself out. I used to say to people all the time, it's just broccoli. Like, if you don't cook broccoli right, the worst that's going to happen is the broccoli will be kind of soggy and won't have much taste. It's not going to kill anybody. It's not going to kill you. It's just not going to taste as good. And as you learn to cook, you will unfortunately have to sometimes eat things, because you never want to waste food that aren't that great. But it's okay, because you're going to learn from that experience. Next time you make that, you're going to remember, last time I made this, it really needed more salt. Or last time I made this, I wanted it to be spicier. And so I'm going to add more chili powder. I'm going to add more cumins, more cayenne, whatever. You will learn these things and you will become a better cook. And you don't have to be Gordon Ramsay the first meal you ever make. And by the way, Gordon Ramsay's never coming and knocking on your door and wants to taste your food. So don't worry about it. You're the only person judging you. You know what? Some of your friends who don't cook will probably be amazed that you can cook anything. So just go with that. You'd be very surprised. And by the way, you don't have to be, every meal doesn't have to be a gourmet meal. If you've had a long day and you're tired and you want to open a can of tomato soup and make a grilled cheese, God bless you, sweetheart. Go do it. That's one of my favorite meals. I'm not kidding. It's one of my favorite meals, especially when I'm really tired and I've had a long day or whatever, not feeling well, whatever. Tomato soup, grilled cheese. Love it. One of my favorite things. Always cook a little bit extra. Or if you cook a large amount of something, cut it in half immediately, put it in a container, put it in your fridge, either to take to work the next day or to eat as another meal. Right? Absolutely. Always do that. There are certain things that are stupid to buy. Iced tea is at the top of my list. Tea bags are one of the cheapest things you can buy. The only other ingredient you need to make iced tea is water. Right? I mean, it's like, it doesn't get much simpler than that. Just make the tea and put it in the fridge. I constantly see people buying iced tea and it amazes me. And then people are like, oh, but I like the way this one tastes. And I'm like, it tastes like sugar. It's just tea. Buy some sugar, put some sugar in your tea. That's it. You don't need to buy the Arizona iced tea. It's all good. You can make it yourself. It's so much cheaper. Iced tea is seriously one of the cheapest things you can make. So don't buy it. Please make it. Okay. All right. Peanut butter and jelly is your friend. Yeah, unless you're allergic to peanuts, in which case change that to almond butter or whatever you're not allergic to. PB&J is your friend. And I'm going to tell you why it's your friend. When you are getting really low and payday is until Friday and today is Thursday and tomorrow's Thursday, right? It's Wednesday night. And you don't know what you're taking for lunch. You're going to take a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and anything else you can scrounge out of that refrigerator, even if it's 3 baby carrots. And that is going to save you a ton of money. It's going to save you enough money that you'll make it till Friday, right? Or whenever you can go shopping again. I have this little trick, and I'm sure you've all heard this before, but never go shopping hungry. And this is true of everything. I wouldn't even go shopping hungry. I wouldn't even go shopping for like a dress if I was hungry. It's weird the way your body reacts to wanting things when you feel physically hungry. You feel much more relaxed, less anxiety when you're not hungry, and I think it leads to better decisions in all ways. So have a PB&J before you go food shopping. All right. And now we're going to get down to the real nit. You thought we were doing a deep dive before. We're really going to dive deep now. Here's a couple basic things to always have in your house: rice, potatoes, and pasta. These are by far the cheapest fillers that you can have around the house. Rice fills you up, potatoes fill you up, pasta fills you up. They're very easy to make. You can pair them with all kinds of stuff. And, think outside the box. Stuff that you think would only go with rice may go fine with pasta. Same with potatoes. Like sometimes if you have like this, say you have like this much chili, right? Like a quarter cup of chili. What are you going to do with that? Like, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. You can make something that I lovingly refer to as Cincinnati chili. Don't ask me where I got the name, because somebody told me that's not what Cincinnati chili is, but it's what I call Cincinnati chili. And it is basically little bit of leftover chili, a little bit of leftover tomato sauce, some grated cheddar cheese, some pasta, and some raw onion. And you literally just cook that pasta, you throw that chili into it, you put that grated cheese on top. I always add a little more sauce to the chili to give it a little more of a sauce texture and less of a chili texture. And you put the raw onion on top. That is so good. You guys have no idea. It may not sound good to you, but if you try it, you'll be shocked how really good it is. Also, like you might think that like something like stir fry only has to go with rice. No, roll that stuff up in a tortilla. So good. So good. So think outside the box. That's definitely something you should think about. I also always have certain things around the house. I always have onions around the house, and I always have carrots around the house, because you can do so much with those two in combination with potatoes. So you got like they're like the big three kind of vegetables. Some other stuff I always love is I like cabbage and I like broccoli. Cabbage will last forever in your fridge. If it gets a little brown, cut that part off. It's good. The rest of it's fine. Don't worry about it. Broccoli, not so much. You got to use broccoli faster, but I love it. Broccoli is so good. When it comes to your food, especially when you're first learning to cook, one of the mistakes that I see a lot of first-time chefs who are learning to cook and cook from scratch that they do is they buy a lot of spices that they won't use that much. In fact, it's not even first time. I did this. I bought online, because I couldn't find it, this special Korean pepper paste to use in this like cucumber recipe. And it was great. And I used it and I haven't used it since. It's like been in my fridge for like a year. It wasn't super expensive, but I had to buy it on Amazon. It was like a huge like deal, right? Don't go crazy with the spices. If there's one that you love, like the Montreal steak seasoning, if you love putting that on burgers, then by all means buy it. But most people, I'm going to give you a list of the spices that most people will use the most. Cumin, you're going to want to put that in with beans. Bay leaf, you're also going to want to put that in with beans. Chili powder, curry, but only if you like Indian food. If you don't like Indian food, personally, I like curry. I've curried eggs, curried potatoes, and stuff like that. But if you're a person who really doesn't like Indian food, then you can even skip curry. Italian seasoning. Now, here's an interesting thing about Italian seasoning. A lot of Mexican recipes call for oregano, which is fine. So you can either have just oregano or Italian seasoning, or you can use your Italian seasoning in your Mexican cooking. Makes it taste great. And cinnamon. Cinnamon is so much more versatile than people think it is. It can take boring oatmeal and make it taste good. It can take just toast when you're broke, and if you have a little bit of sugar, even if it's a sugar packet, right, and some cinnamon, you can make cinnamon toast with the last of your country crock or whatever you have, whatever you got going, right? You also always want to have salt and pepper. I personally think that you should always buy the most expensive, the best salt you can afford. That doesn't work out for everybody. Not everybody can do that, but salt is important. Having salt in your food is going to make a difference. Your food is just going to taste better. Same with pepper. Pepper gives a really nice boost to food, especially when food is cooked for a long time, like soups. I tend to be a person who doesn't put pepper into the food. I put it on the food. I think that really makes a difference. And I right now have a peppercorn grater thing that I got. I got it at Dollar Tree, and it's really good pepper. It's really good pepper. I pretty much always have olive oil, eggs, peanut butter and jelly around, because if nothing else, I can always eat those things. A little bit of bread and maybe some potatoes, and I can survive for a couple days on that. Yeah, really. And, coffee creamer. I also always have hot dogs around. I like hot dogs. You know what? I like poor man's meal. Rather than going over the recipe for poor man's meal, which there actually isn't a recipe, just go look it up. It's interesting because you'll probably find Clara's video, and Clara's the bomb. God rest her. Yeah. When you go to your store, definitely look for reduced meats. I know this freaks people out, but there's nothing wrong with that meat. Very often, the reason they put the tag on that meat to get rid of it is because they bought too much, and they know it's going to go bad before they can get rid of it. So they take the stuff that they already have, right? And they put tags all over it, and then they put the new stuff out, right? And when I say new stuff, I literally mean it could be the difference between a day. Like they got a whole bunch of it on Tuesday, and then they screwed up the order and got more of it on Wednesday. So they put all the stuff from Tuesday, they put a tag on it, buy it, freeze it, you'll be fine. Don't worry about it. If you are going to buy meat at full price, ground meat especially, look for the tubes. So I've seen ground sausage in tubes. I've seen ground beef in tubes, and ground turkey in tubes. By the way, the turkey is pretty much always going to be the cheapest. Sometimes the sausage is pretty cheap too. If you don't like the taste of the ground turkey, I'm going to give you a hack. Take a beef bouillon cube and kind of mix it into the turkey with just a little bit of water to cook it, and it'll give it a more beefy flavor. Because I know what you mean. Ground turkey is not, it's not the best. All right. Buy bouillon cubes, don't buy stock. Unless you can make your own stock, but yeah, you're paying too much. In fact, I got this at Dollar Tree today. And for all my Puerto Rican friends out there, you just went right on. This is the reason Puerto Rican food tastes so damn good. And this is the bomb, man. This stuff is so good. This with some rice will just, you have no idea. But this is so much cheaper, and it does not go bad. Once you open those jars of stock, or even the aseptic stock boxes, right? They start to go bad. So you got to use, do these instead. They're so much cheaper. When you go to buy pasta sauce, if you look either up or down away from the jars, you're going to see pasta sauce. It's usually by Hunt's in a can. Buy that instead. Or go to the tomato aisle, get the cans that say tomato sauce on them that are super cheap, and put your Italian seasoning in them. Fry up some mushrooms, some onions, whatever you like, green pepper, whatever you like. Put it in and make your own sauce. Not so much from scratch, but kind of like semi from scratch, right? Buy plain yogurt. It can be substituted for so many things. It can be substituted for sour cream. It doesn't have quite the weight that sour cream has, so the mouth feels different. But it can be used instead of sour cream. It can also be used to lighten up scrambled eggs. It can be used in omelets. It can go all kinds of places. And one of the things I like about plain yogurt is very often the sweeteners that are used in yogurt, even just the plain vanilla, the like unsweetened vanilla, are really crappy sweeteners. It's much better for you to take real vanilla, right? Because a lot of times it's not real vanilla either. Real vanilla and a little bit of sugar, and mix it into your plain yogurt, and then mix your fruit in. The fruit yogurts are always more expensive. They just are. And they usually have crappy ingredients. If you really look at them, it's fruit concentrate. It's not the fruit. So just stick with plain yogurt. It has so many multiple uses. Just keep with that one. It's actually really good if you're doing if you do like Indian food and you like a biryani kind of style, I think I'm pronouncing that right, vegetable, like in a tomato, you put the plain yogurt into it, and it's just good. There's so many things you can do with it. You need to stay away from name brands and do not be brand loyal. That brand doesn't care about you, except if you stop buying their product. That's the only reason. That's the only reason they care about you. Yeah, don't be brand loyal. You need to buy what's on sale. That's it. And many times it's going to be the store brand. And here's the thing about the store brand. Very often they're made in the exact same factory of that quote brand that you love that costs $2 more. This is especially true of things like bread. Like bread, here's a perfect example. The Dollar Tree in my town, I was in there one day and there was a Stroman's truck out front. Now, Stroman's is a local company that makes bread in the South Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, Delaware area. Very well known. All the bread for Dollar Tree is made at the Stroman factory. And I saw the bread guy putting it out and I said, so Stroman makes all the Dollar Tree bread? And he goes, yeah, for this area, for this region, which means that now here's the thing. The Dollar Tree bread costs $1.25. And at the time that happened, it only cost $1. If I went across the street to the supermarket across the street and bought Stroman's bread, it was back then, I think it was at least $2.99. So I was paying $2 extra because it had a label that said Stroman's. Yeah. Don't. Yeah, stick with what's cheap. Here and there, you're going to find stuff that definitely there's a better version, and that's fine. I get that. Like, I don't buy broccoli cuts. I only buy broccoli florets because you end up with a lot of stem and not a lot of broccoli, flowers, right? Let's talk about frozen vegetables. Buy regular frozen vegetables. And what do I mean by that? You now have these steamer bags, right? You are paying for the technology of that steamer bag. We already talked about streaming. Steamer bag. Very often that same company has just the regular old, bags that you open and you heat on the stove or heat in the microwave or whatever, in a container, whatever. And they're so much cheaper. And I have yet to find any that are that different. In fact, I'm really curious. I've often wondered if there's something being added to the vegetables that makes them steam in the bag, or if the bag is the technology. Just my perception, but it is much cheaper. And I've also, like, this just happened to me last week. I bought frozen vegetables and they were like $1.99 for the steamer bag of green beans, but it was only like 10 ounces of green beans. And then I looked over and I noticed that for, I believe it was $1.69, I could get the whole bag, a pound of string beans cut in a regular old bag, frozen string beans. There was no difference. It was the same company. So I bought those instead. They weren't even on sale. That was their regular price. By the way, don't be uptight about frozen and canned. I can tell you right now, there are certain vegetables that, in my personal opinion, taste better from the can than frozen. One of them is corn. I think corn out of a can tastes better. It's sweeter. Now, granted, they may have put sugar into the actual water that's in the can with the corn. But if you're concerned about that, you can just put them in a colander and spray them off. It'll come off. And peas, especially the petite peas, they're good. Now, they are a little mushy. Some people don't like them because they're mushy. I'm personally not. I love mushy peas. So there you go. That's just my thing. But, buy dried beans and not canned. I know for a lot of people, this is like the only canned beans I actually buy is garbanzo beans, chickpeas, because they take forever. But I can do, if you have an Instapot or even a crock pot, even if you do them on the stove, you can do dried beans so much more quickly and you get more bean for your buck, literally. Like a 1 pound bag of at Dollar Tree of pinto beans is $1.25, but the cans in a supermarket for pinto beans are $1, more than $1.25 usually. Also, you can also make your own refried beans, which are super easy to make, and there's a million videos on how to make refried beans. Just look it up. It's easier than me even explaining it to you. You're going to want to think about store dupes in general. store dupes for all products, but one of the one that I would absolutely bring up would be medication. You don't need to buy Advil. You don't need to buy Tylenol. You can buy generics of the very same thing. If you have a Walmart near you or a Walgreens or a CVS, they all make generics of these. And again, you're not paying for labels, packaging, television commercials, any of that. Look for store dupes. And it's not just food. Like I said, store dupes with food is perfect too, but absolutely look for store dupes of other stuff. And if you're really concerned, flip them over. You'll notice that the ingredients are almost exactly the same. Cough drops, all of it, like all of it, all of it, all of it. Oh yeah. Speaking of being brand loyal, don't be store loyal either. You need to look at your circulars. And if you have the ability, if you have a car and the ability to drive a little bit, you need to go from store to store, because every store is going to have different loss leaders. Even though there's definitely seasons for things, you might find blueberries at one place for 89 cents a pint. And, there's a supermarket a block down the street that's selling them for 79 a pint. You got to do that. Don't be loyal to these stores. They're not loyal to you. Trust me, they're just not. And now we're going to talk about a couple things you should always be saving. And the number one thing that I see people throwing away, and it breaks my little heart, is don't throw away bread. There's literally so much you can do with bread. If it's slices of bread, do French toast. If it's the heels of the bread, do breadcrumbs, do croutons, do, bread pudding. Please don't throw away bread. There's a million things you can do with it. Again, if you don't believe me, just Google what to do with old bread on YouTube, and it'll all of it will come right up. But also save your potato chip crumbs. And this is a weird one, but I'll tell you why. When you get to the bottom and you can't even eat them, it's just like little crumbs, right? Pour that into a jar, like an old jar. Also save your jars, and also save your yogurt containers. I'm one of them. If you make mac and cheese, to make your mac and cheese better, put it in a pan and just sprinkle it with your leftover potato chip crumbs when you get enough of them. When you need about a quarter of a cup, maybe a little butter, and bake the thing off for just a split second, hopefully in a toaster oven, because it will fit in a toaster oven. So good. So good. So absolutely yummy. I'm telling you, it'll blow your mind. By the way, you can make excellent tuna casserole with just boxed macaroni and cheese, drained can of tuna, and whatever frozen vegetable of your choice with potato chips on top. I'm not kidding you. It's super simple and it's pretty good. I've made it before. It's a very cheap meal and I've made it before. Mac and cheese and ramen are two things I always have around too, because you don't have to use that ramen packet. In fact, you can use it in place of bouillon. But you can do all kinds of stuff with ramen. You don't have to do soup. You can fry up those noodles after you cook them with some oil, with some vegetables. Oh, so good. Leftover meats, anything like that. Okay, I wrote this down. This is funny. Do yourself a favor and take free food. Okay, I'm not talking about stealing. I'm not talking about taking all of the sugars when you're at a diner. I'm not talking about that. But what I am talking about is say you're at a diner and you have coffee, but you don't really use sugar, and there's a couple packets. Take one or two and keep them around for emergencies. They'll save you money. You get a mustard packet with something, but you don't really use mustard on that sandwich or whatever it is. Keep it. If you're at work and someone says, oh, we had donuts in the conference room. Does anybody want them? Because I'm going to throw them away. Say, I'll take them and put them in a bag and take them home with you. Enjoy donuts for the rest of the week. Same with, I used to work at a place where we used to do these lunches all the time. They would always over order. And there would always be a tray with half a dozen sandwiches on it. And me and another woman that I worked with, we used to take them and we would take a couple. And I remember she and I standing there, I'd be like, oh, I like tuna fish. Do you you don't like tuna fish? Okay, I'll take the tuna fish because you know what? I don't really like that one. And we'd switch back and forth and she'd take them home. She had 3 teenage boys and I was single, and it was great. We used to take it, don't let food go to waste, not just in your house, but everywhere. Just food waste is a sin. I said it. I said it. The next thing we're going to talk about, and I'm going to talk about this because this is another one that people go, oh man, right? They get really upset when I talk about this. You need to meal plan. I know. It's painful. Some of you are just, you're not doing well with the meal planning thing. And I think what's happening is people get really bogged down with all the components of meal planning. What's on sale at the supermarket, what I already have at home, what we're doing this week, that week, what tools I need to use. Do I need a crock pot? Like they start to freak out. Here's my solution to this. And it's really funny because when I originally started my channel, this is the reason my channel is called Cheap Hussy, is this was the kind of stuff I wanted to talk about. And specifically, this is a meal plan idea that I devised. Yeah, back in the olden days, 5 years ago. So, number one, Monday, meatless Monday. Doesn't matter what it is that's meatless. If you like veggie burgers, that's the night you have veggie burgers. If you love ravioli, that's the night you have cheese ravioli. If you love to have, I'm trying to think of more meatless things, just like stir-fried rice for some veggies and maybe a little egg in it. There we go. That's your Monday meal, right? Tuesday, Taco Tuesday. Doesn't have to be tacos. It can be chili. Just think Mexican. It makes it really easy when you're in the super. By the way, this makes this really easy when you're in the supermarket. Wild Card Wednesday. I always reserve my Wild Card Wednesday for whatever I found that week that was a really good deal at my supermarket. Some weeks it's pork chops. Other weeks it's ground meat. It can be like anything. And again, this is where I'm using my loss leaders. I'm using them on the Wild Card Wednesday. And I'm doing with them whatever my favorite recipe is or whatever I know how to make. Again, you don't have to be Gordon Ramsay out of the gate. And Gordon Ramsay is not coming to your house to critique your food. So just relax, try new stuff. The worst that can happen is it's not going to taste so great. You might burn it, whatever. Thursday, I think doing breakfast for dinner is a really good idea. I still do breakfast for dinner. What I usually do in my breakfast for dinners is I make myself an omelet. I always have eggs around. I always have cheese around. Usually by Thursday, especially, I have like, this much of green pepper and 4 little pieces of broccoli that I didn't bother to throw away. Well, there you go. There's my omelet. It's a broccoli and pepper omelet. I usually have some cheese. There's my omelet. I make toast with it. It's my breakfast for dinner. It saves you a fortune. I'm not kidding you. It saves you a fortune. So does Meatless Monday, by the way. When you remove meat from the diet in general, you're saving money. But if you are a meat eater, if you only do even one day a week without meat, you save yourself a phenomenal amount of money. Friday, do fish. If you can get fish in your area, you can get it fairly cheap. I live on the East Coast. I live in New Jersey, so I can get fish really cheap. I do fish on Friday. The other thing you could do is stir Friday. Yes, I did steal that from Archer. I'm a huge Archer fan. Yeah. See, I'm kind of cool, my own little way, right? Saturdays. After you've worked all week and you're really tired, you probably don't want to cook, right? And give yourself the night off. And here's what I say. Every week, my supermarket has pizza on sale. Sometimes it's the good stuff. Sometimes it's the okay stuff. Just buy whatever pizza they have on sale. My supermarket almost always has something around $5, $5.99, $6, or like $4.99, right? Even the Tony's, which is not very good pizza, I'll buy stuff to doctor it up. Like I'll fry up mushrooms. I'll add stuff to it to make it a slightly better pizza. But it gives me the break from cooking and thinking about food. During the summer, if you have a grill, if you can grill, I can't grill in my apartment complex, but I still do this. I replace that with hot dogs, which are always kind of cheap, especially in the summer. And again, so easy. I have an air fryer. I pop the hot dogs in the air fryer for a short period of time. It makes them delicious, and they kind of taste like they were on the grill. And it saves me an incredible amount of money. And then Sunday, just eat leftovers. I would say dedicate your Sundays to going food shopping. I actually have this little hack that I do, which is I shop for food on Saturday and Sunday. And what I do is I'll have the old circular and I'll have the new circular by Saturday. So I can look and I can see, okay, potatoes were on sale this week for $2.88. Next week, they're not on sale at all. So that means this Saturday I'm going to pick up potatoes. But then I can look and say, oh, sour cream is, $1.99 this week. Oh, but next week the same brand is 99 cents. So that's what I'm going to buy on Sunday. It's a little hack, but it saves me a lot of money. This is another one that's going to gut everybody, but just bear with me. Yeah, save your Sundays for doing a little bit of meal prep. A little bit of meal prep goes a long way, by the way. Try to avoid snacking. I know this is a tough one because people are like, what do you mean don't snack? Right? Okay. I'm not saying don't snack in general, but if you're a person that likes to game, or if you like to binge watch, like you like to stream videos, but you like to binge watch, when you sit down and you start eating out of that bag, right? Whatever it is, potato chips, Doritos, popcorn, I don't care. Doesn't matter what's in the bag. It's the bag. You're sitting there, you're watching TV or you're gaming and you just keep doing this, right? That bag, especially some of these name brands are $5, $6, $7 now. That's a lot. That is a lot. And you are eating it basically mindlessly because you probably will get to the bottom of the bag and you'll be like, holy crap, did I eat that whole bag of whatever, Doritos, whatever. Try to avoid snacking when you're doing things like streaming, gaming, any of it. In fact, try and replace, obviously you can't do it with gaming, but with streaming, I would say replace it with a hobby. I've started crocheting and it's been a good thing, If you are really, really having a tough time, and I cannot emphasize this enough, please find out where there's food pantries in your area. And you may feel like, I'm young, I'm really, I'm young, I'm able, I work, I shouldn't go to the food pantry. It should be for people that are really desperate. I'm not that desperate. Sweetie, if you don't have any money and food till payday, you're desperate. Check out a food pantry, see what you can get. It's amazing what pantries give away. And you know what? The thing that I like about them is they're also receiving food from places that would normally be wasted. And I hate the idea of wasting food. I just do. To me, it's a sin. That's it, babe. That's all I got to say about that. And then that's pretty much it. I do have more stuff, but this is getting really long. And I just think it's too long. But I'm going to close with this one little thing. If you want to have plants in your house, think about getting plants you can eat. So some good ones that are really easy to find are very easy to grow are cilantro, rosemary, basil, and chives. The only thing you got to watch out for is the basil. You got to keep an eye on basil because it'll sprout up and it gets a flower and it starts to smell kind of funny. But yeah, so that's my advice. Hi, sweetie. That was my dog. From me to you as a old woman who's been poor her whole life. This video is very long, so I don't want to take too long. But I do want to say, if you use milk, this is from Dollar Tree. This is called an aseptic package. I buy my milk this way. First of all, it's cheap. It's a quart. It's $1.25. It's actually, I think, cheaper than my supermarket. It doesn't start the clock as far as going bad until you open it. And because I don't use milk that much, I use it mostly for cereal and sometimes for cooking. I use half and half in my coffee. I don't want to deal with like constantly throwing away milk because it's gone bad, which actually technically you can still use bad milk, but you guys need to learn to cook from scratch first. So think about getting your milk in a package like this. Also, if you do plant milk instead, check out the prices because you might be paying an awful lot for that carton and that refrigeration when you can get an aseptic pack like this for your plant milk. So I hope that all of that has been helpful. I really do. I would love to do this again. I can't believe I talked so much. I never talk this much. Seriously, anybody who watches my channel regularly, half an hour, 45 minutes tops. We're over an hour now. Holy moly. That's a lot for me. Anyway, if you guys are interested, leave a comment down below. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below. If I can figure it out, I'll try and help. If I get enough people that say, I really like this, you should do another one, I might start a second channel and I will surely let you know. But until next time, I hope that wherever you are, you're doing okay and you're not struggling too much. Learn to relax a little bit. life and time has a way of working things out. You will not always be poor. A couple of really good decisions, and you can at least be a little less poor. So until next time, I hope wherever you are, you're doing well. I hope you had a great day off and have a great week and hang in there. It does get better. Bye.